Om Tavakatamritam Taptajivanam Kavipiriditam Kalmashapam Sharavanamangalam Srimadatam Bhuvinranantiye Burida Janaha. The nectar of your words, the praise of poet-seers, elixir to parched souls, delight to listening ears. Cleanser of all sins is great and glorious. They who spread it far and wide on earth are most generous. Om, peace, peace, peace. Good evening, friends. We will be continuing with the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. At present, we are on page 158 for those that are following along in the book. For those that are looking at an electronic book, we are at November 1882. So it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon when Sri Ramakrishna arrived in Calcutta to attend the annual festival of the Brahmo Samaj, which was to be celebrated at Manilal Malik's house. Besides M and other devotees of the Master, Vijay Goswami and a number of Brahmos were present. Elaborate arrangements had been made to make the occasion a success. Vijay was to conduct the worship. The Kathak recited the life of Prahlada from the Purana. For those that may not know, a Kathak is a professional reader of the Puranas, usually invited to these mass gatherings. And I believe that they will almost enact what they're reading with their voice, change their voice according to who's talking, just as you might read to children. So the Kathak recited the life of Prahlada from the Purana. Its substance was as follows. Hiranyakashipu, Prahlada's father, was king of the demons. He bore great malice toward God and put his own son through endless tortures for leading a religious life. Afflicted by his father, Prahlada prayed to God, "O God, please give my father holy inclinations." Now, I believe that almost everyone in India knows this story, but many Westerners may not know. So for their benefit, I'm actually going to give a more expanded version of the story, only because it's relevant to the rest of the talk, that the rest of the discussion that Ramakrishna is going to be presenting. So Hiranyakashipu was the king of the Asuras. So by Asura, sometimes it's translated as the demons. Other times it's translated as those that live a immoral or a life of enjoyment. So, and he came to believe that he was superior and more powerful than the omnipotent Lord Vishnu. And he declared himself to be God of the whole universe and proclaimed that there was no other God but himself. And then he strictly enjoined that all worship of Vishnu would cease and instead be offered to him. But he had a son named Prahlada, who so happened to show great devotion to God as a child. To drive these thoughts out of the boy's mind, Hiranyakashipu presented his son to two very strict disciplinarian teachers, and they were given strict instructions that Prahlada was never to hear the name Vishnu mentioned again. The teachers took the prince to their home, as was customary in those days, to study there with the other children of his age. But instead of studying, the young Prahlada devoted all his time in teaching the other boys how to worship Vishnu. When the teachers found out, they were frightened for their lives, should the king find out. So they tried their best to dissuade Prahlada from such teachings. But Prahlada did not stop. To vindicate themselves, the teachers told the king that his son was not only worshipping Vishnu himself, but spoiling all the other children by teaching them to also worship Vishnu. Well, Hiranyakashipu became very much enraged, and he tried to dissuade Prahlada from the worship of Vishnu and taught him that he, the king, was the only God to worship. He was the Lord, but it was to no avail. The child declared again and again that the omnipotent, omnipresent Vishnu was the Lord of the universe and the only being to be worshipped. For even he, the king, held his throne only so long as it pleased Vishnu. The rage of the king knew no bounds, and he ordered the boy to be immediately killed. He was stabbed with sharp weapons, but felt no pain. He was trampled by an elephant, but could not be crushed. He was thrown over a cliff, but landed like a feather. Poison, fire, starvation, thrown into a well, and other measures were then tried, but also to no avail. Nothing could hurt him, because his mind was always absorbed in Lord Vishnu. And in so doing, he experienced everything as Lord Vishnu. Regaining consciousness, Prahlada insisted that Vishnu was the Lord of the universe, beginningless, endless, omnipotent, and omnipresent. That Vishnu alone was to be worshipped. The king was fueled by anger and tried to kill Prahlada himself. But Vishnu, in his terrible Narasingha form, where he took on the form of a half lion and half man, protected Prahlada and killed his father, Hiranyakashipu. Then Lord Vishnu spoke, "Prahlada, ask for anything you desire." Well, Prahlada emotionally replied, "Lord, I have seen thee. What else can I want? Do thou not tempt me with earthly or heavenly boons." Prahlada continued, "That intense love, O Lord, which the ignorant bear to worldly things, may I have that same love for you, but only for love's sake." He went on further to say, "O Lord, pardon my father for all the sins he has committed. Weapons have been hurled against me. I have been thrown into the flames. I have been bitten by venomous snakes, and poison has been mixed into my food. I have been bound and cast into the sea, and heavy rocks have been heaped upon me, all because I put my faith in you. Please free my father from wickedness and give him holy inclinations." Well, that's a condensed version of an even more elaborate story. But when Sri Ramakrishna heard this, that all these, he said, the Kathak ended or said, Prahlada prayed to God, "O God, please give my father holy inclinations." Well, the master knew the whole story, and hearing this, at these words, the master wept. He went into an ecstatic mood, and afterwards he began to talk to the devotees. The master said, "Bhakti is the only essential thing. One obtains love of God by constantly chanting his name and singing his glories." So here Prahlada demonstrated bhakti, an intense love of God, through all manner of afflictions. Now, although it would be good for us to also develop such devotion to God, none of us will ever have gone through all this torture. It makes our lives look very simple. Oh, no problem. We should have no problem realizing God, given that we have not gone through all this torture. So we should have no problem keeping our mind on God. So this is an extreme example, but it's a story that yes, there are people that go through great suffering, but still the suffering does not inflict their devotion. So they still have devotion to God. So regardless of all that we go through, it is still possible to keep our mind on God. Because in many ways, God also tests our devotion. And so these are inspirational stories to remind us of that. So the Master reaffirms that bhakti is the only essential thing. One obtains love of God by constantly chanting His name and singing His glories. And now he's remembering something. What a devotee Shivanath is. Shivanath is one of the householder disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, who often comes and visits wherever Sri Ramakrishna is going to be. And he continues and he says, he is soaked in the love of God like a cheesecake in syrup. Well, if anyone knows what a rasgulla is, that's very much, it's probably the same thing. I can't imagine it being anything else, but made of cheese and soaked in syrup. And if anyone hasn't had those, they are very delicious. So, but now he's saying, one should not think my religion alone is the right path and other religions are false. God can be realized by means of all paths. It is enough to have sincere yearning for God. Infinite are the paths and infinite the opinions. Now, throughout the Gospel, yes, Sri Ramakrishna is mentioning that bhakti is the best path for this age, for most people. But then he also says that bhakti should be mixed with jnana, a certain amount of reasoning. Otherwise, bhakti alone will make one feel that, well, this is the best thing. That means I must make sure that everybody believes what I believe, because I'm doing the best thing. So you become more fanatical. You start to try to convince other people that they should follow love of God. But in reality, Sri Ramakrishna has experienced the different paths, the different religions. And he experienced bhakti, followed the path of devotion, the path of knowledge or jnana yoga, the path of self-control and mental concentration, the path of Raja Yoga, and the path of selfless service, selfless action, karma yoga. He himself would encourage everyone to practice all these different spiritual practices, which are all the spiritual practices which are within the different practices of the different religions, different faiths. So he had just been mentioning that Prahlada is the only thing, that bhakti is the most essential thing. He's talking to the Brahmo Samaj. In the past we read that he tells the Brahmo Samaj that you are bhaktas and that is good. He's talking to the Brahmo Samaj again, also on bhakti, but now he's telling them, but it's not good to say that your faith alone is the only path, that there are other paths, and Sri Ramakrishna has proved that with his own life. So he has the authority to speak this way to them. So one obtains love of God by constantly chanting His name and singing His glories. So the Brahmo Samaj existed before Sri Ramakrishna before they even visited Sri Ramakrishna. And in many ways, his contact with them also, before him, they would not be chanting the names of God. They thought that image worship was not to be promoted. They thought that although they were trying to re-inspire India with the Hindu faith, they were more of a social group. They wanted to raise the masses by allowing the widowed women to remarry, and also to increase their educational level. They should have the same education as the boys were. So they were on the social, working mostly in the social spectrum. But they also demanded of their members that they should be morally upright. They would have to almost fill out a declaration when they would join that they will speak the truth, they will follow the moral injunction of the scriptures. So in that sense, and because many of them had English education, they were being swayed by the modern reasoning and so forth, and science was making them question their own faith. But the Brahmo Samaj wanted to reestablish that no, Hinduism is a valid path, not just Christianity that the British were bringing in. And so they were on this path when they decided to meet Sri Ramakrishna. And he taught them that no, God has form and God does not have form. He can be worshipped either way. They were trying to worship a God without form just so as not to be more universal. So Sri Ramakrishna taught them how to chant the name of the Mother and the different deities that no, they do have validity. They may have form, but the different sects within Hinduism, if followed sincerely, help one to realize God. So in many ways, he helped the Brahmo Samaj deepen their own faith. So he did not want it to become one-sided. He said, so bhakti is one thing, but there are many other aspects that they should also accept. So infinite are the paths and infinite are the opinions. Let me tell you one thing, God can be seen. The Vedas say that God is beyond mind and speech. The meaning of this is that God is unknown to the mind attached to worldly objects. Vaishnav Charan, who was a noted devotee of the Vaishnava sect, and he was an admirer who would come and visit Sri Ramakrishna. He used to say that God is known by the mind and intellect that are pure. By pure mind, we're talking about a mind that is unattached to worldly enjoyment and suffering, a mind devoid of ego, and a mind fixed on God. So Vaishnav Charan was a devout Vaishnava. Of the sect is devoted to bhakti, the teachings of bhakti. But he would say that God is known to the mind by the mind and the intellect that are pure. Therefore, then Sri Ramakrishna continues, therefore it is necessary to seek the company of holy men, practice prayer, and listen to the instruction of the Guru. These purify the mind. Then one sees God. Dirt can be removed from water by a purifying agent. Then one sees one's reflection in it. One cannot see one's face in a mirror if the mirror is covered with dirt. So when one seeks the company of holy men, what do holy men talk about? Not worldly endeavors, not making money. They're supposed to talk about God, about the scriptures, everything necessary to inspire you or inspire us to take up the spiritual life seriously. So for some it will be through stories like Prahlada, and then together with that, the story is a lesson, a moral lesson, something to learn. Some people don't like to be told what to do or how to live their life, but if you tell them stories, the story is enough to make them rethink that opinion, and then they say, well, I'd like to be as strong as Krishna, or as or Lord Rama, or as pure as Prahlada, have that kind of devotion, or as truthful as as some of the sages and the lovers of God. These are all, when you visit a holy man, these are the things he would talk about, and then explain the scriptures and make them relevant to modern life. Just as we're reading the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, we try to understand his teachings. They were back in the late 1800s, but are they still relevant today? So our task here is just to try to understand and make these teachings relevant to today. So we try to explain some of the things that we read here, and different swamis and different people will, from their point of view, will try to explain what we're reading. And then you also have to do spiritual practice of prayer, sincere prayer, but not just for yourself, but pray for others. Pray for everyone that's suffering. Try to include all existence in our prayers. Try to think beyond ourselves. When we pray for everything and everybody, we ourselves are included in that. So don't just say, oh, pray to God to relieve my misery. Well, what kind of prayer is that? You will feel misery if you see everybody else suffer and be in misery. But if you see everyone else happy, then you will feel happy. So pray for everyone else, not just ourselves. And then listen to the instructions of the Guru. Someone who has experienced God can give you proper instruction and proper guidance. And these purify the mind. And then one can see God. And then he gives the analogy of the mirror. Our mind is full of all kinds of things, worldly thoughts, worldly aspirations. But what really matters, nothing is possible without love of God, or without thinking about God, without remembering that God gives us all the things that we hold dear. But we think we've achieved these things. But that we are being misguided. God has given us the opportunities to attain or achieve certain things. But should we think that we did that? Yes, we did put in effort and all those things, but that is also by the grace of God, by giving us the ability to concentrate on something, not being distracted. So we should think, well, by the grace of God, I was able to do my homework without being distracted by the television or by the internet. So we should always think, well, by the grace of God, such and such is possible. And that will help us remember God. And eventually that will develop a deeper love of God. And then he says, after the purification of the heart, one obtains divine love. These are all precursors to developing divine love. And then one sees God through his grace. And one can teach others if one receives the command from God after seeing him. Before that, one should not lecture. There is a song that says, "You have set up no image here within the shrine, O fool. Blow in the conch, you simply make confusion worse confounded. So imagine a teacher trying to teach you math, but doesn't really know math. He's teaching you, he may know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide, but somehow he's trying to teach you calculus. What kind of math are you going to learn by someone who only knows how to do the 4 functions on a calculator? So unless one has actually experienced math to a deeper degree, only he can teach you calculus. So also only one who has really realized God can actually teach you about God. If you really understand something, if you really develop love of God, you will feel God is within you all the time. And then you'll be offering worship to that God within you. But not just within you, you'll see God in each and every being, and you'll be worshiping that. So what is the point of doing worship and everything if you only do it just because the scriptures say so, but you never develop love of God in your heart? If you can't even see God or imagine God in your heart, what kind of devotion are you going to have? And what kind of teaching will you give? You're only going to, you yourself will be all confused about what you're teaching. So that's why he says you're only going to make confusion will only be more confounded. So you should first cleanse the shrine of your heart, then you should install the deity and arrange worship. As yet, nothing has been done. What can you achieve by blowing the conch shell and simply making a loud noise? So if someone is told, well, one should do this and this worship in the shrine, and then they can invoke God. But if you go up to the shrine and you don't believe in God, you do all the worship and everything, all that's all very mechanical, what kind of worship is that? You have no devotion. Will God even manifest himself or herself in that image? So first develop love of God, then you can do worship anywhere. So now Vijay sat on a raised stool and conducted the worship according to the rules of the Brahma Samaj. Afterwards, he sat by the master. Master to Vijay, will you tell me one thing? Why did you harp so much on sin? By repeating 100 times, I am a sinner, one verily becomes a sinner. One should have such faith as to be able to say, what? I have taken the name of God. How can I be a sinner? God is our Father and Mother. Tell him, O Lord, I have committed sins, but I won't repeat them. Chant his name and purify your body and mind. Purify your tongue by singing God's holy name. If one keeps one's mind on more godly thoughts and is inspired by them and follows the scriptures and realizes God, it becomes very difficult for that person to make moral mistakes. And Hinduism does not really speak of sin. They just say, no, those are just mistakes, misguided by ignorance. And if one realizes those mistakes, then one can also rectify them and say, oh, no, I won't do that again. But one must have the strength of mind to be able to say, no, I won't do that again, and actually be able to follow that commitment. And that takes practice, especially in a world where we have to compromise on so many things. It's sometimes very hard to have that strength of mind to say, no, I will never do that again. But we have no problem when we see fire. We know that when we put our finger in fire, we get burned. And we have no problem saying, no, I will never do that again. So when we really feel burned, We won't do it again. But we can save ourselves a lot of burning. And we can do that on the onset without having the full experience. And that's where one is either, that's where the wise, they watch how others behave. They learn from others. Say, oh, that person's suffering when he does that. Best to stay away and not get entangled in that. So we can learn from, so they learn from that, and we can learn from their example. We watch how others suffer, and we know that, no, that's not good for us. Is it good to smoke, drink, take drugs, all these things? If we see the effect on others, then we would be very careful whether we should adopt that kind of behavior. So that is the end of the day here, and so that I will conclude with that today. So there are a few announcements to be made. Tomorrow evening at our retreat, Swami Nikhilananda will be continuing with his series of reading from the book Towards the Goal Supreme. That's an online class only. A few people do show up in person, but the link for that, it's through Google Meet. It's actually a discussion group, not like here. I speak, you listen. But there they try to have an interaction and try to understand what the contents of the teachings are. And on Friday, Swami Satyamananda will continue with his class on the householder disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. And he will be speaking about Chunilal Basu. And this Sunday we will have a Mother's Children's class for children. They are practicing a skit to be performed during our Holy Mother's luncheon at the retreat in 2 weeks from now. And also on Sunday at 10 a.m., Swami Satyamananda will be giving a talk here on the soul's 3 layers. And also on Sunday evening, we'll have Ramnam here in the chapel. So I will conclude with a chant. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukampa Dritavigraham Vaim Ishavataram Paramesamityam Tvam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha. We salute that Ramakrishna, who is without blemish, eternal and infinite in forms, who has assumed human form out of compassion for the devotees, who is God incarnate, the Lord supreme, and who is most worshipful. Om, peace, peace, peace to all beings.